happening? Happy Friday to you and yours. Thanks for joining us as always. It is very much appreciated. By the way, quick note before I get to Evan and his football genius. No podcast on Monday. I'm traveling. I'm going to SummerSlam. Yes, you can pick on me in the comments if you'd like. I couldn't care less. I love wrestling. So there it is. So I will not have a podcast for you on Monday. Back Wednesday, though, with the mailbag and some good stuff. And don't forget to click that thumbs up and like the podcast as you watch. Well, here he is. I told all of you that we were going to have a special guest on this episode. And just to let everybody know, we're recording this on Thursday evening. So if anything breaks on Friday, along with the wrestling picking on me, you can pick on me for doing a recorded episode on Thursday night and missing something huge. But here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Evan Lazar, Patriots.com. He's been a friend of the pod for the last couple of years. Evan, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing well, Nick. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Let's start because I don't want to keep it too long. I'm sure you got dinner and everything getting ready here. So I want to start with the coaching staff, Vrabel and the staff. How different is this year's camp compared to last year's?
Well, I would just say that, this year compared to last year is a question I've gotten a ton. And I feel like there's so many different ways to answer it because I don't want to go back to last year and act like there was never any optimism for the Drake Maye era, because I think there was. I think there definitely was, and I don't want to sit here and say, oh, it was doomed from the start, because I don't necessarily think that was the case. But I would say the difference between this year and last year that stands out to me is the back and forth that we're seeing between the offense and the defense. It's so much more even in these practices where the last couple of years, let's face it, and I know you've been down there, the defense has just been dominating, but then you have to take a step back and be like, well, is the defense dominating or is the offense just really bad, right? It's hard to kind of tell how good is the defense and that whole thing, and that whole mind game that I feel like I've been playing with myself for the last 2 or 3 camps. That is not the feeling that I get from watching these practices. I get a feeling of two sides of the ball that are being well coached, that know what they're doing, that are competing. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win the Super Bowl either, but it just means that there's not a lot of, guys are lining up incorrectly, rehuddle. Guys are false starting, rehuddle, and clunkiness overall to the operation, which allows for just competitive 11 on 11s.
Yeah, a lot of people, I've been saying this for the last week or so, we look at camp and people are going bananas about, oh, well, Campbell lost this rep and Campbell lost that rep. Well, there's the other side to it. Like, you don't necessarily want Campbell stoning Keon White and Chaisson every single time either, right? You need a little bit of that give and take. You need a little bit of that, as you would say, like iron versus iron. You do need some of that. So it's not the worst thing in the world. Now, do you want somebody to lose like 3 reps in a row? No, that's not what you want to see, but you do want to see some of that pushback. All right, let me ask you about the quarterback. For you personally, and we all know, Evan, you were a fan of Maye last year before the draft. You were very happy they drafted him. I was happy they drafted him. Has he exceeded your expectations to the first 7 or 8 practices here?
I don't know if he's exceeded them, but it's not, in a bad way. I feel like the biggest thing that I see with Drake right now are a comfort level with Josh McDaniels' offense that is really encouraging. I wasn't sure exactly. So in this sense, I guess he has exceeded. I wasn't sure exactly how quickly he would grasp this system. It's a complex system. There's a lot on the quarterback. I still think pre-snap they're working through some things that are now on Drake's plate that they're going to have to figure out in terms of protections and all the details, Mike points and setting protections and sniffing out blitzes and all that good stuff. But post-snap, I just see a guy that's in rhythm, that's on time a lot, that's picking out matchups, that's winning before the snap with his eyes and being able to decipher defense with formations and all the different presentations that Josh McDaniels gives you that I think is probably McDaniels' best strength, which is we are going to give you the answers to the test before the ball is even snapped by spreading defenses out, by presenting things formationally, offensively, that's going to allow you to figure out what the defense is in quickly. And that's such a big part of McDaniels' offense. So when the ball is coming out on time and he's not holding it a ton, that tells me that he's running the offense the way it's supposed to be run. So there's some nitpicky throws every quarterback where he'll miss a couple throws. He admitted today that he missed a couple in the red zone work that they did on Tuesday. Tuesday. But at the same time, I think the overall picture is no picks, which is huge,
Yep.
and the fact that the ball is coming out on time.
Yeah, and going into this, as you mentioned, the McDaniels offense, you don't know how quickly May will be able to grasp everything. And there was I think it was the first OTA practice where everybody was losing their minds because he threw like 3 picks or whatever. It's like settle down, everybody. It's an OTA. It's the first. Like, take a deep breath, calm down. It does feel like he has a pretty good handle on what he's trying to accomplish out there, a pretty good understanding of the offense, which is, I think, a really good sign. And we just look at it in a vacuum too, Evan. But we got to remember, I mean, what's it been? 4 different OCs the last 4 years. He had an OC, the sophomore year in North Carolina. Then he changed OCs going into his junior year. Then he had AVP last year. Now he has McDaniels this year. So this guy's gone through a lot of offenses the last 3 or 4 years. And he's been able to apparently pick it up, which is, speaks volumes to his football IQ and his work ethic. Evan Lazar with us here from Patriots.com. You know who he is. Everything Pats podcast. So Will Campbell, let's get to him. Would it be fair to say he has a passing grade so far from what you've seen? What would you say about Campbell and what he's done?
Yeah, so I have to admit, going to get a little soapboxy here with Will Campbell for a second, Nick, because I understand that this is what we do. This is what the media does, and I'm part of that. And I'm not trying to like separate myself from that. We're all a part of it, where we all go and watch practice, and it's who's up, who's down, who's rising, who's falling, who's had a good day, who had a bad day.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying don't do that. That's reporting. That's the job. That's the gig. What I am saying, though, is that I feel like we are hyper focusing on the pass protection element and the couple of reps that he is losing in some of these practices. And we're not even mentioning the stuff that he's been doing well. And I came away from these padded practices just blown away by his run blocking ability. He is right out of the chute. He is already a NFL caliber, if not better than that, run blocker. Day one of pads, he's caving in the line of scrimmage on down blocks. He's up to the second level on linebackers. He's leading the way on tosses and outside zone, front side pulls and things like that. Like day one of pads, he's doing all these things. He's putting guys like Milton Williams into the ground, like right out of the chute. And I don't hear any of that. Like, I don't hear any of that being discussed because Caleb Chaisson and Braden Swinson beat him with an inside move a couple of times in Wednesday's practice. Like, that's the only thing that's being discussed. Or Keon White, day one in pads, beat him in one-on-ones. And we're talking about that. The other thing that I think, just continue on my soapbox. The other thing that's like a little bit, kind of grinding my gears about it is people like us, people like Barth, and all of us that were in the draft industrial complex with this for 6 months. We all knew going into this that he had some limitations in pass protection and he was going to be an elite run blocker. Like that was the book on Will Campbell. We all knew it. We all knew that he was going to have to develop a little bit as a pass blocker. And then we get into the first week of camp and he's been kind of uneven as a pass blocker. And all of a sudden now the sky is falling, right? And it's like, this is exactly what we knew he was going to be. So in all these respects, like he's as advertised, like he's come fully as advertised. And I have no questions about his long-term future. I have no questions about his short-term future, but this notion that he had to come out of the gate and just be Joe Thomas on week 1 of pads and just be this Hall of Fame caliber tackle because they drafted him for overall, which is another thing. Like we all told you it was a down year in the draft. Like we all said it wasn't one of those drafts where there was a Joe Thomas, Jonathan Ogden, Orlando Pace level left tackle available. So, and then we get into pads and Will Campbell's, pass protection's uneven. His run blocking's good. His pass pro needs work. And we're all surprised. Like we're all acting like, he's a bust already, out of the gate. I think that he's exactly who I thought he was. And that's the good and the bad.
Yeah, I try to look at this on balance, and that's what I always said. Whether it's doing a radio show or a podcast, I couldn't care less. I look at things the same way. It's just how I operate. Now, I try to take it on balance. Like, what's a guy done throughout camp? What's he done through the first, week, 2 weeks? What's he done through the entire practice, not just the first couple of reps? what I've seen, from people who have talked about this and what I've heard and what I've read is that he's bounced back relatively well. He might have a bad rep, but then he comes back and he shows that, he's learning some things. So I just think, look, we know how it is, Evan. Patience is not a strength, especially in 2025, and people want immediate results. From what I've read, from what I've heard from people I've talked to, like you said, it's not a huge surprise. And I think overall, on balance, he's been pretty solid, which you would take. He's 21 years old. he's still a really young dude that has to learn an awful lot. Another really young dude is Jared Wilson. And I got to ask you, he said, Will Campbell is as advertised. I knew some about Wilson. I watched, a decent amount of SEC. I watch a decent amount of Georgia because they're so good. And I read stuff and I talked to, people, and I listened to guys like you. And I thought, like, all right, he could get a shot here in year one eventually, but maybe he's more of a 2026 guy. And then we get to training camp. And this is somebody, Evan, who did he miss the entire OTA or most of it?
He didn't participate in any of the full team stuff. Okay. He was out there doing the individuals and all that stuff.
All right. So he's out there doing individuals, mandatory minicamp. He's pretty much, for all intents and purposes, persona non grata. And then if you think about it, within 5 practices, he goes from a guy that is he going to get on the field for training camp day one to being a presumed starter on this offensive line. Is this one of the fastest or the fastest rise that you've seen from a rookie in camp, from literally not being out there with the team to 5-6 days of camp? He now looks like your starting left guard.
Yeah, it's a definitely a quick rise. And you asked me earlier, like, has Maye exceeded my expectations? Jared Wilson has definitely exceeded my expectations. I'll be the first to put my hand up. I thought for sure a 21, 22-year-old rookie with only 1 year of starting experience at the SEC level at center, a position that's a cerebral position, is as much between the ears as it is physical. I thought there was no real chance that he was going to be a starter come week one. Maybe I didn't give the left guard experiment enough credence, and that's another area where I missed on that. But like in general, I just didn't think that he was going to be ready to start right out of the chute. The only lineman in my time covering the team that I remember that came out of not nowhere with he was a top 100 pick, but close, was Onwenu, his rookie year, where, he just came into training camp and all of a sudden Onwenu was out there at, right guard, right tackle, jumbo tight end. Like they were just trying to get him on the field. They knew he was an NFL player and they were trying to get him on the field. But Jared Wilson has just blown me away from really just in every way, honestly. Like the cerebralness, the ability to absorb things as quickly as he has without really participating in the spring, and then just stepping right in and seamlessly stepping into the line and looking in like he belongs and can wear the suit. I think his athleticism, which is what everybody you talk to, down at Georgia, everyone that I talked to when I wrote our profile about him, said the athleticism, that's obvious right out of the chute. But I didn't recognize how technically sound he was too, with his feet, refitting his hands. When he loses initially, he can get his base back and he can refit his hands and get back underneath guys and put them, stonewall them that way as well. And he's got great grip strength. Both him and Campbell really have really good hands, as strong grip strength as well to end reps and things like that. So Wilson's been awesome through 7-8 practices now. And I think, it also should be said with just from a big picture standpoint, if they drafted 2 starting caliber linemen in one draft, it's just a huge win for Vrabel, Cowden, and Wolf. Like it's just a massive win for the entire regime, their scouting staff, everybody, because this was the worst offensive line in football last year by every metric, by a wide margin. And now you have 2 rookie starters that look the part, that should be starting, aren't being thrust into start because out of necessity, like they look the part. And that can go such a long way for improving this entire group. So I'm really bullish on both those guys, but Wilson definitely has caught me by surprise.
Evan Lazar with us. All right. I got to ask you, because I feel like we've been very positive so far. Your concerns about this O-line, do you have any?
Yeah, I definitely have plenty. I think the biggest thing with this offensive line as a whole is just pass protection in general. I think across the board, they have better run blockers than they have pass blockers. And now that means they could lean on teams. They could be a run heavy play action, boots, move the pocket, maybe gun run RPO. Like they can do different things with that. Be maybe like Detroit or Philly-esque, right, where you're really building everything off of the run game, but you're still passing with at a high-ish volume.
Yeah.
But at the same time, pass blocking just across the board, I think Campbell's going to have his ups and downs in that regard. Garrett Bradbury is probably going to be the starting center, and that's a weakness of his game, as well as pass protection. Morgan Moses, 34 years old, big dude. We've seen him get beat a couple of times around his corner, around his edge, just with pure speed. Is he going to be able to set out to those guys? Is he going to be able to get all the way out to a speed rusher off the edge? I think that's a big question mark. So I like what I've seen out of their run blocking. I think that's been really good through the padded practices that we've seen. Pass blocking, I think, still remains a work in progress. But I would say that if you can run the football, then maybe you can limit the exposure of the true pass sets or the drop back passing that you have to do by staying ahead of the chains, by play action, all those fun stuff.
All right, we're about halfway through. Help a brother out. Don't forget to click the thumbs up. You're watching on YouTube. Likes help us with that algorithm. Don't forget to comment as well and subscribe. And also, my friends at Spotify, Apple Pods, I appreciate you. Rate, review, and follow. All right, I just want to jump to the receivers quickly here. I was talking to my buddy Jim Louth. I know you know Jim a little bit.
Yes.
The number 2 guy at 98.5, let's call him, right? The assistant program director. I've known Jim forever. And I texted him last week, Evan. I was like, so what jumped out at you at camp so far? And he said, Stefon Diggs. And I said, well, thanks, Captain Obvious. And he said, the part of Diggs, though, he said, I believe he put it this way. When Diggs catches the football, it's like he's catching the ball with like 2 pillows. It just softly hits his hands, and he just kind of like he said it's different. It's just different from what I've seen. Everything about him's kind of different. What are your thoughts on Diggs so far?
Yeah, I'm trying not to get too excited about Diggs right now because the 2 lines that I've been saying about Diggs. One, this is the first time in forever the Patriots might have a fantasy relevant wide receiver. Like I truly believe that. Like if you're a fantasy person listening to this, like you can draft Stefon Diggs and he might be a legitimate wide receiver option for you in fantasy this year. And for me personally, this is the best receiver I've seen in a Patriots uniform in training camp since Prime Edelman. And I don't think that that's particularly close. The hands is a great point by Jim. I didn't necessarily recognize how magnetic Stefon Diggs's hands are until I saw it up close in person over the last week and a half. He's got terrific hands in traffic, both going up above guys and holding on to the football, but also just like working over the middle of the field, and he's got somebody draped on him and he's just able to still snare it, and keep it away from the defender and hold on to the ball that way. He's way he moves is just so efficient with his route running. No wasted movement. He's smooth out of his cuts. He's just different. That's a great way to describe it. He looks different than the rest of the group. You could say that's good or bad, I suppose, but he looks different than the rest of the group and really different than a lot of the receivers that I've seen come through here over the last 8 years now that I've been covering training camps. Even going back to Edelman, I think he's right there, if not better than Edelman too. So it's been really fun to watch. And I just don't see a world that a healthy Stefon Diggs doesn't catch 100 passes in this offense. I just don't know how that we don't get to that point. Obviously if he has injuries and all that, that can derail anybody's season. But if he's healthy for 16, 17 games, he's going to catch a whole lot of passes.
I just can't believe he was out there day 1 of training camp. Like everybody was saying that he was ahead of schedule, and his agent and Diggs, and they're all these videos, and his personal trainer and all, working on his rehab. He's ahead of schedule. He's ahead. I would never have imagined that he was out there day 1 of training camp, and he hasn't taken a day off. It's not like they're load managing him in any kind of way. He is above and beyond what I expected as far as just being ready out there, able to do what he's doing. And hopefully this trend continues. Do want to ask you about Matt Collins quick, off the PUP, back at a walkthrough today. X is interesting to me. And I know that they got a bunch of people that they can put there, Evan. You know, you can even put Pop out there a little bit. They've tinkered with that a little. You might be able to throw Diggs out there. You've got Williams. You've got Booty, who was the number one guy until today. Then Hollins comes back, and he jumps right in with Diggs and Douglas. How do you think they split those reps? And as we get ready for the season down the road, what do you expect from that X receiver position? Who's there mostly, and how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's interesting because, really outside of Randy Moss in this Josh McDaniels offense, that X receiver spot, I've been calling it the sacrificial X, right? You're just running goes, you're running comebacks, you're running deep posts, and your job is to occupy the safety, to stretch the field, to create space underneath you for the real volume guys to catch their passes at the first and second level. Now, every once in a while, you might be one-on-one backside and the quarterback might, target you that way. But for the most part, it's not been a super high volume role. Like, I always go back to the Brandon LaFells, right? Like those types of receivers. And I think that on paper, you can look at a guy like Caisson Booty and say, oh, yeah, he could do that. He kind of did that last year, right? I think that type of production, 40 catches, maybe 600 yards, like that's what that role entails in a lot of ways. Now, the ideal is that Kyle Williams breaks out and he takes that X spot to a whole nother level. And now all of a sudden you have a guy that can be featured from that position instead of just someone that's a little bit more of a just out there running wind sprints at times. So I think that there's a little bit of both there. Now, Matt Collins of it all, I think is interesting as well. He's had a decent run here with Vegas a couple years ago with McDaniels, with Buffalo last year. He was a reliable receiver for them. So he was a great run blocker as well. I know people don't like to hear about the run blocking receivers, but he's one of them.
Yep.
He can play on special teams. So he's going to be here. Like, he's going to be on the roster. Is he going to be taking snaps from Booty and Kyle Williams? And that's going to be up to Booty and Kyle Williams. Like, he's a veteran guy that can play the part, that knows the league, that knows how to play professional football. So it's going to be on those younger guys to be better than him and to push him off the field. I don't think they're going to have any hesitations to doing that, but they're not going to just hand it to those young guys either. They're going to have to go out there and take it. So I think that's the element with Matt Collins. Just one more thing about him. We were talking to Efton Chisholm after practice today. He did media availability, and he told a story about Matt Collins, and he said that Matt Collins asked him for a ride home after practice one day, and which is bizarre. Like, I don't know why Matt Collins doesn't have a car, but whatever. So Matt Collins, Efton Chisholm was like, yeah, obviously I'll give you a ride home. It's fine. And then Matt Collins told him that he was going to go home and he was going to study some more. He was going to study the playbook and get ready for the next day and maybe watch some practice film. And Efton Chisholm said to him, well, can I come with you? And we'll do it together. And that story to me, which has become now a regular daily occurrence, according to Efton Chisholm, they do it every day now. That's why Matt Collins is here. Like those types of things are much why Matt Collins is here as the on-field stuff, is to show some of these younger receivers who had issues with maturity and issues with professionalism last year how to be pros. So when you hear a story like that, it's kind of like, Josh Dobbs in a way too. Like that's Matt Collins doing his job.
All right, I was going to ask Evan about the running game, but this is what I want you to do, everybody. Go check out Catch 22, the episode from Wednesday. I watched most of it, haven't gotten through the entirety of it yet, but Evan and Alex do a great job of breaking down the run game, and Evan will get all hot and bothered about the type of blocks he's seeing from Campbell and Jared Will. Go check it out if you want to know about the running game. Needless to say, I think all of us feel pretty decent that this running game could be good. I want to get to the defense. I don't want to keep Evan too long. Let me ask you about Caleb on Chaisson, my favorite name on the roster this year. Is it possible? I saw Bedard write that Chaisson even got some reps on the goal line. And it's kind of interesting, right? Like, Anthony Jennings seems like he's on the outside looking in. And, of course, run defense on the edge is a question if that's the case. Is it possible, Evan, because Chaisson's been great, is it possible that he's playing himself into a bigger role than we might have first anticipated?
Absolutely. That's exactly how I would write it too, in terms of his role. The things about Chaisson that stand out to me, we obviously knew about the pass rush, and Greg is spot on that he's been making more plays in my mind too against the run than I expected. And when I look at Chaisson, just going back throughout his career, because I was looking at this morning because I'm really interested in him because I liked him coming out of LSU. I think a lot of us did in the draft, and it was like, why didn't this guy work out, right? Why hasn't he totally panned out? So his first year in Jacksonville, the Jaguars drafted him in the first round. It was Doug Marrone's last year as the head coach there. They won one game. They were the worst team in football. They had the number one overall pick. They take Trevor Lawrence. His second year in the league is the Urban Meyer year in Jacksonville, which is just a train wreck, right? So he wins one game his rookie year. His coach gets fired. Then he has the Urban Meyer year the following year. His coach gets fired. And for a young player, we see this all the time. Like, that is really hard to overcome. It can derail a lot of young players' careers. And when I look at Chaisson, I see his skill set and I see the Vrabel defense and the fact that everybody's talking about getting off the ball and first step explosiveness and aggressiveness and flying up the field to make plays. And it's like, why can't Terrell Williams and Mike Vrabel pull out first round talent out of Kayvon Chaisson? Like, what's saying that they can't do that? Now, I'm not saying he's going to go ahead and be Micah Parsons, but like, there's a world where Kayvon Chaisson is a better player than what he's been able to show. Scheme fit, coaching staff, just all that kind of stuff, that maybe the Patriots can get that out of him.
Yeah, I mean, unlike any other sport, right? I mean, I'm a huge basketball fan. You're a big basketball fan. Hockey the same way. Baseball. I mean, individual is individual. You put them on the field and they do what they do, right? But when you talk about football, scheme fit is so crucial, and you never know. Like, one guy might look like a pig, not in a good way, as Lou Merlone would say, a bad pig, and you go, that guy's never going to work out. And then he gets to a different system, different coaching staff, and then all of a sudden he's a contributor. And that's kind of different about the game of football versus so many other sports that we watch, where you might not see it from the guy, but then all of a sudden scheme and coaching makes all the difference. I do want to ask you, I'll wrap up a question all into one, a couple of questions into one. So Keon White, Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, out of those three guys, I'll even throw Harold Landry in there. Those four guys, who's gotten you the most excited so far?
Barmore, definitely Barmore. I mean, they're managing his reps coming back from the blood clots. I think they're just trying to be careful and take it slow and make sure that he has no more setbacks with what happened last year. But every single time he's in a drill, he's wrecking the drill. Like, there was a offensive line versus defensive line. They've been doing like kind of like inside six is what I would call it, like six blockers against six defenders in the box, and there's no secondary, there's no receivers. It's just like a run game thing. And Barmore was just like wrecking the drill so much, I think they pulled him out. They were like, all right, well, we can't even do anything because you are just destroying this drill. So he's looked fantastic. He said he slimmed down. He's down to like 305. And he's just back. His play strength looks all the way back to what it was pre-blood clot. So Barmore, definitely.
Kind of geek to watch Robert Spillane play football. Should I be?
Yeah, I think he's an underrated player, just league-wide. I say this all the time. I don't think very many people were watching Vegas Raiders games last year, and understandably so. He was really good with the Raiders. He's a really good clean up the trash kind of middle linebacker. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be used as somebody that's going to make the plays in the backfield, but when the guys that are supposed to make the plays in the backfield shoot their shot and miss, he's going to be the one that's going to make sure that that's only like a 5-yard run instead of a 50-yard run, hopefully, in theory. So I think that he's going to clean up a lot of tackles. He's going to be 100+ tackle guy if he's healthy.
And you just read quotes from his teammates. They just talk about how incredibly intelligent he is and like how he's able to diagnose things and understand what the offense is trying to do. And I think that quarterback at the second level is obviously a pretty important role for any defense. And I'm looking forward to seeing him flying around and smacking people. Evan Lazar with us. Just two more for you, Evan. Obviously, Christian Gonzalez, Carlton Davis, the injury situation that would impact it significantly. But big picture, are you confident in this secondary?
Big picture, yeah, I would expect Gonzalez and Davis to both be out there week one, no question. Gonzalez, I think this is really one of those things where he's a second team All Pro. We don't really need to see you until week one against the Raiders.
Right, right.
Ideally, we might get a few more practices in there just to make sure we iron some things out. But at the end of the day, he's a corner. He's going to be on an island. They're going to tell him he has, whatever jersey number he has that week, and he's going to take that guy out of the game. That's not a highly scheme. It's not like a middle linebacker like we were just talking about, where he's got to communicate, he's got to call the plays, and he's got to set the fronts and like that. No, that's not what he's doing. So as long as he's out there week one, Carlton Davis, Vrabel continues to tell us that this is a plan, that this is all part of some master plan that they have for Carlton Davis to keep him healthy, because he has had some injury issues throughout his career. So that makes me feel better that this isn't like he had a setback and had to come off the field. This is more part of a script that they have for Carlton Davis. I think the one question we all have about the secondary is, how are these safeties going to fit together? Do they have a true center fielder? Is Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar a tandem that can work together at a high level, or are they too similar to one another that their redundancies are just going to cause problems? So all camp long, they've really been cycling through Marcus Epps, Jalen Hawkins, Craig Woodson, the rookie, trying to find a third safety. Like, who's going to be our third guy in? That's going to be that Deron Harmon type. That's going to be able to put everybody else in their natural spots. I don't think they have a clear-cut answer to that question just yet.
All right, let's get you out on this. And again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as you watch, listen, all that good stuff. Biggest concern on each side of the ball that you would have right now, if you're a coach on each side of the ball. We won't include special teams. We'll break Alex's heart. But if you're looking offense, defense, if you're a coach on each side, what are you looking at saying, man, we got to figure this out in the next week or two. We got to figure this out as we get ready for joint practice against Washington.
Well, I'll package this together because I think this is really my biggest concern, big picture with the entire team right now. I feel so much better about their starting 11 on both sides of the ball than I did a year ago. I think their frontline players are improved. And I even think some of the guys that they had here last year are going to be better than they were for the previous staff. Ramondre Stevenson, we just talked about Peppers and Duggar. The question is, if any of these guys get hurt, what's behind them? And what kind of depth does this team have? Because Vrabel has only been here one offseason. So he's only had one offseason to build this roster. And you can't build all 53 players in one offseason. So if they lose, Will Campbell, who's the backup left tackle? I don't know. Vidarian Lowe probably, but is that good enough? If they lose Morgan Moses, Tamontre Jacobs has been the top backup in these practices. Is that good enough, right? Like, we can go right down the board. We were talking about Diggs earlier. If they don't have Diggs, do they have enough in the wide receiver room, in the tight ends, and the pass catchers to overcome losing a player like that? So it's great that they brought in all this talent, which they did. But I like their one deep. I don't know how I feel about their two deep right now. I think in a lot of spots, it's maybe a house of cards. And so you're kind of holding your breath, hoping that there's not any true major injuries at areas where they really don't have great depth.
It's a big week coming up. Slow weekend. They got the scrimmage tonight for all the season ticket holders, but then the weekend off. And then next week, big week. You got Washington coming up, that joint practice, followed by Minnesota the following week. So things going to heat up pretty quickly here. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. Hopefully you enjoy yourselves over the weekend. Be well. This is Evan Lazar, Patriots.com. You know who he is. You know all about him. You can read him there. You can follow him on Twitter. His battles with Alex are historic and epic on Catch 22. So you can check Patriots Unfiltered. This dude's all over the place. Evan, I appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time out, my man.
Always, Nick. Always.
All right. We'll talk to everybody soon. And again, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.